Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're looking at something that feels, well, a bit contradictory, doesn't it?
Okay.
Applying structured goals to something as personal as, unquantifiable as spiritual growth.
Right. It seems counterintuitive at first glance.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Hmm.
We've got a source here that lays out a really clear path. 7 simple steps.
Mm-hmm.
The idea is to move spiritual growth from being like a happy accident
Yeah, something just happens to you.
to something intentional, something you
Wow.
actually build into your life.
And that intentionality, that's really the heart of it. Our sources talk about spirituality not just as beliefs, but as this personal journey.
A journey that does what exactly?
It grounds you, gives you
Yeah.
clarity, and fundamentally, it connects you to something bigger, a higher purpose. It sort of provides the why behind everything.
So it's not just navel gazing. It has real world impact.
Oh, absolutely. Far from it. Whether it's a very personal path or, a tradition handed down, spirituality can shape huge life choices. Who you marry, your career, your daily habits, even, as the source points out, what you wear.
Wow. So it really acts like a compass.
Definitely. For your whole life.
Okay, but I have to jump in with the big question right away. If this is about faith, the soul, intuition, things that feel spontaneous,
Yeah.
why the structure? Why the goals? Isn't writing meditate 10 minutes kind of, I don't know, cheapening it, turning it into a checklist item?
That's a fair challenge,
Mm.
and it's something we need to address head on. The idea here isn't performance tracking. It's not about metrics.
Okay.
It's about intentional integration. That's the phrase. The sources argue that structure helps turn that abstract wish, that hope,
Into something real.
into an applied reality. Yes,
Yeah.
it gives you purpose, day to day, and crucially, clarity. So your actions, the little things you do every day, actually start aligning with your deeper beliefs.
So it's less about ticking a box and more about building the muscle, the habit that supports who you want to be spiritually.
Exactly right. And when you have that alignment, you tend to feel more resilient, emotionally stronger, Your well-being improves because there's less friction.
Friction between belief and action. Makes sense.
Yeah. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, there's a philosophical idea underpinning this, captured really well by that Wayne Dyer quote.
Which one is that?
We are not human beings in search of a spiritual experience. We are spiritual beings immersed in a human experience.
Okay, yeah, I know that one.
So goal setting in that context is just the deliberate work. It's the spiritual being figuring out how to operate within this, let's face it, often messy human world.
That framing the spiritual being integrated, yeah, that makes the need for tools much clearer. Okay, so let's dig into these tools, the 7 simple steps. Where do we start?
Step one is foundational, right? Define your spiritual goals.
Right. Get it out of your head and onto paper.
Precisely. This is where you take that fuzzy aspiration and give it sharp edges. You need to figure out your primary spiritual goal, the one that really clicks with your core values right now.
And the sources insist on being specific, don't they? No vague stuff like be a better person.
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
It needs to be quantifiable, measurable, even though the subject feels intangible.
So give us some examples from the source.
Okay, things like, I will meditate for 10 minutes every single morning to center myself. Or I will go to my weekly religious service or spiritual group meeting.
Or even something like, I'll read one spiritual book each quarter next year.
Exactly. That measurability is key. Because if your goal is just center myself, how do you know if you did it? It's
Well,
too
if
fuzzy.
meditate for 10 minutes.
It's clear. You either did it or you didn't. That clarity shuts down the wiggle room for procrastination or, kidding yourself.
Okay, clear goal defined. What's next?
Step two.
Step 2, balance, harmonize your spiritual practices with daily life.
The reality check.
Pretty much. It's
Yeah.
the warning label. You've got this great intention, but don't try to boil the ocean.
Right. Don't overload yourself. Exactly. Ambition is good, but burnout helps no one. The spiritual being doesn't thrive on chaos. It needs steady nourishment. So find specific, realistic times for your practice.
Prayer, meditation, reading, whatever it is.
Right. And it's not just about scheduling. It's about protecting that space, allowing for stillness, making sure this spiritual goal doesn't just become another thing stressing you out.
Good point. So you have the goal, you've made space for it. Now you need fuel. Step 3, research.
Step 3, research deepen your understanding of spirituality. This is about feeding the mind, the intellect, in service of the spirit.
How so?
Actively seek out knowledge. Maybe that means studying specific texts or teachings relevant to your goal, or finding a mentor, or joining a group, a workshop.
So it's about learning more.
It's about intentional learning. Growth needs knowledge. Knowledge needs seeking.
But I wonder, there's a potential trap here, isn't there? Especially for people grounded in faith.
What do you mean?
Couldn't this research phase just become intellectual? You could read every holy book cover to cover and still feel completely disconnected spiritually. Is there a risk of just collecting facts instead of fostering faith?
That's a really important distinction.
Right.
And I think the source implies the research needs a specific aim.
Discernment.
Discernment. Okay.
If the ultimate goal is integration, then the research should help you grasp the principles you're trying to live by, not just historical details or abstract theories. It's about finding the resource, that book, that person, that group that pushes you to apply it.
To live it out, not just think about it.
Exactly. It has to connect back to that defined goal from step one.
Okay, that makes sense. Application, not just accumulation. All right. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. We're moving inwards now, right? Beyond schedules and books. Step 4.
Step 4. Affirm, reinforce your spiritual aspirations.
Affirmations. Some people might roll their eyes a bit at that.
Maybe. And look, they're often seen as just like self-help fluff. But here, in a spiritual context, they have a very specific job.
They're a tool, a gentle, constant way to kind of reprogram your thinking, to align your everyday mindset with that higher purpose you defined back in step 1.
So how is a spiritual affirmation different from just, say, a motivational one, like I'm going to crush this presentation?
Good question. A standard motivational one focuses on the self, on capability. I am strong. I am successful. Spiritual affirmations, as the source presents them, connect the individual self to something larger.
Like the examples they gave.
Right. Things like, I am connected to a greater purpose and live in alignment with my beliefs. Or, I approach each day with gratitude and intention. See the difference?
Yeah, the focus shifts outward. Connection, purpose, gratitude, not just personal power.
Exactly. It's less about puffing yourself up and more about orienting yourself towards that connection. And this actually subtly prepares the ground for some of the harder work later on.
Interesting. And this mental reinforcement ties into the next step. Step 5, visualize.
Directly. Step 5, visualize. Imagine living your spiritual goals. This is about engaging your imagination, but with focus.
Focusing on what?
On the transformation. The source asks you to vividly picture the results of living out your spiritual goal. What does that feel like? Inner peace, sharing kindness more easily, being genuinely mindful throughout the day.
It sounds a bit like positive thinking, but you mentioned a crucial layer.
Yes, the crucial layer is the ripple effect. It's not just visualizing your own inner state. The source specifically says to imagine how achieving this spiritual goal positively impacts other parts of your life.
So how does being more centered affect your work or your family relationship?
Exactly. Your health, your interactions. If you're truly integrating that spiritual being, as Dyer said, then its influence should spread. You're visualizing not just personal gain, but maybe even that emptying of self we'll touch on later, and how that leads to peace.
Okay, mind aligned, vision clear. But theory isn't practice. We need action. Step 6.
Step 6. Act, establish spiritual routines and practices. This is where, as you say, the rubber meets the road.
This feels like circling back to step 1, but with commitment.
It is. It's the solidification, making it real. This step is about creating those concrete, actionable habits that do the work.
Like the 10 minutes of meditation we talked about.
Exactly. Starting the day with that specific prayer or meditation. Or maybe it's volunteering every week for that cause that aligns with your values. It's a consistent commitment, daily, weekly, whatever fits a goal that builds the habit. Turns intention into, well, spiritual muscle memory.
And it's often in this action, this commitment, where you start to feel the cost, maybe, which probably sets us up for those deeper insights later.
It definitely can. Commitment requires effort, sometimes sacrifice.
But before we dive into sacrifice, there's one more practical step, often overlooked, I think. Step 7.
Step 7. Celebrate, honor spiritual milestones and growth. So important.
Why celebrate? Seems odd for internal growth.
Because if you don't pause and acknowledge the progress, it can feel invisible. Especially with inner work. Life rushes on. You need to consciously stop and reflect. Look back and see how far you've actually come on this path.
But how do you celebrate something internal? It's not like getting a bonus at work.
No, it's not about external rewards. You celebrate by acknowledging those moments. A moment of real clarity you didn't expect. A feeling of peace that settles over you. Or maybe noticing you responded with compassion in a situation where you previously wouldn't have.
Recognizing the change within yourself.
Exactly. It's that internal nod, that recognition. Okay, this intentional work, these steps, They were making a difference. There is transformation happening. It fuels continued effort.
Right. So we have the full practical structure: define, balance, research, affirm, visualize, act, and then celebrate. This is a solid framework.
It is.
But I know our sources didn't stop there. They included a kind of warning, a reminder that real spiritual progress might demand more than just good habits and positive thinking.
That's right. The sources do pivot. They acknowledge that these 7 steps are, in a way, the mechanics. But true, deep spiritual growth often involves profound internal shifts.
Shifts that can be uncomfortable.
Definitely. What's fascinating here is the authors bring in some really challenging ideas, ideas that almost redefine what a spiritual goal even is.
This is where it gets intense, isn't it? I'm thinking of that Watchman Nee quote.
Yeah, powerful stuff. He says, if you have not experienced the death of self, your spiritual life will have little real progress.
The death of self, that's stark. What does that mean in the context of goal setting?
It suggests the ultimate goal isn't just adding a spiritual practice like meditation. It might actually be about subtracting something. The ego, the self-will.
So the goal shifts from doing an activity to undergoing a transformation, yielding.
Exactly. It elevates the aim from a manageable daily task to potentially a lifelong process of yielding the ego's demands, which connects back to what we said about affirmations. They need to align with that greater purpose, not just self-improvement.
And then Mother Teresa comes in, linking progress directly to cost. That quote was also quite jarring.
It was. A sacrifice to be real must cost, must hurt, and must empty ourselves.
Must hurt. That feels like the polar opposite of the peace and kindness we were visualizing back in step 5.
Or perhaps it's the path to that peace. You might not reach the genuine peace of step 5 without facing the cost required by the actions in step 6.
The cost of commitment, of prioritizing the spiritual over the convenient.
Precisely. But Mother Teresa doesn't just leave us with the pain. She offers the way through it.
Yeah.
She said something like, give yourself fully to God. He will use you on the condition that you believe much more in His love than in your weakness.
Believing more in God's love than your own weakness, that reframes the struggle.
It does. It connects the emptying from sacrifice not to failure, but to making space for divine action, for grace.
Okay, so let's tie these really profound, challenging ideas back to the practical steps. The goal isn't just the 10 minutes of meditation.
No.
The real goal is the internal shift. Seeking that higher will, as Watchman Nee put it. The daily practice is just the tool, the chisel.
That's a great way to put it. The daily routine, the structure, is the chisel. The underlying goal becomes transformative seeking alignment, requiring, as Mother Teresa suggested, faith beyond our own perceived limits.
It moves from a task to an offering, almost, an act of intentional selflessness.
Which perfectly defines that idea of the spiritual being integrating into the human experience.
Yeah.
It's not always easy, but it's purposeful.
So what does this all mean? We've walked through this clear, practical structure. Define, balance, research, affirm, visualize, act, celebrate. It takes this deeply personal, often vague desire for spiritual growth.
And gives it shape, gives it handles you can actually grasp.
And by following this process, these goals start to weave intention, weave meaning into everyday life.
Exactly. They connect us back to that sense of a greater purpose. They guide us toward a life that feels not just busy, but truly meaningful, just like this source material suggests.
It really is a roadmap for lining up the spiritual side of us with the day-to-day human stuff, even when that stuff gets messy or demanding.
It is.
Yeah.
And perhaps as you, the listener, reflect on these 7 steps and also on those deeper ideas of sacrifice and selflessness,
Yeah.
maybe let this final thought simmer.
Okay.
Consider the difference between just chasing spiritual experiences, those peak moments, those highs, versus truly working to integrate spiritual being, that ongoing commitment, that quiet sacrifice into whatever your primary spiritual goal is.
Experience versus being.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And maybe ask yourself that challenging question inspired by Watchman Nee, which really tests the depth of commitment beyond the daily habit. How much in my prayers is self completely forgotten?